G'day guys, welcome back to Karate Over Coffee. Today I have a special guest, Cezar Borkowski. Cesar runs 14 full-time karate dojo in Toronto. Yes, one city, 11,000 members. So anywhere from 500 to 1,000 members per location, but that is 14 full-time traditional karate and Kobudo dojo in one city. Also, check out my friend Tuari Dawson's Invisible Sensei podcast, as he also sat down with Cesar a couple of weeks ago and talked more about Cesar's history of karate and Kobudo and his philosophy, whereas my episodes talk a little more about the business side and management side of running 14 full-time karate dojo. So if you haven't already subscribed to Invisible Sensei podcast, do that now, and make sure you've also subscribed to mine. But sit back, enjoy, and I'll speak to you soon. Hi, and welcome to Karate Over Coffee. My name is Shane McMahon, and I'm your host. This is a podcast dedicated to my experiences in karate. I started karate as soon as I could walk. My parents owned a full-time dojo, so I literally grew up in the dojo as our house was on top. I've lived and breathed karate my whole life, and I've trained with some really amazing sensei, competed for my country, and I've learned so much about the evolution and history of karate. And I'm here to share my experiences and learn. Enjoy. G'day guys, and welcome back to Karate Over Coffee. I'm your host Shane McMahon, and I've got a special guest, Cezar Borkowski. How are you, Cesar?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much. So, sorry for the elaborate time difference. I think.
No, all good. It's 6 a.m. here in Brisbane and 4 p.m. where you are.
I am. Thank you. That's great talk to you in the future, so maybe you can give me some information what's coming tomorrow for us. So.
Yeah, no problem. Now, I've been trying to get Cesar onto the podcast for a while. We've been talking back and forth for a couple of years about coming onto my podcast and my friend George's podcast as well. But due to lockdown and COVID and everything else came in between, so it's fantastic to have Cesar on today. But Cesar, how did you get involved in karate, and when was that? And
well, I was born in Poland in the mid 50s, still very much a communist country. When I was maybe 5 years old, in Poland, there's really not much stuff happening except for sports, and except the big thing is a book fair. So you have this big book fair in Warsaw where I grew up, and my brother bought me a book which was called Judo: The Deadly Art of Self-Defense in Polish. And in there was pictures of people throwing each other. On the last page, it said, "This is the most dangerous type of judo. It's called karate." Okay. It's a picture of a guy poking a guy in the eyes, with two fingers. I said, "That's it. One day, this is it. This is what I'm going to do." So when I came to Canada, I was 9 years old. I went to the Y and was looking for some sports, and they had a karate class. So I joined the karate class. I didn't speak English, and I learned how to count in English in the karate class. It was instant home for me because I didn't have any kind of friends or any kind of connection. So the makeshift dojo became kind of like a home for me, and basically that was it. When I started training every day, and it was obsession from day one. If they didn't have classes, I would go to. There was very few dojos around. There was only Tsuroka Dojo and a kung fu school called Hanrak. I would go and I would watch, because I couldn't join. I was too young, whatever it was. But so it was an obsession. I started very, very young, and I progressed from there. And the style I was doing at the beginning was called Chito-ryu. Chito-ryu is kind of Okinawan hybrid style. It's basically Okinawan Shorin-ryu type style. It is said that it comes from a couple of different teachers, but actually, which was basically what we call Kian type karate. Seisan, Pasai, Shinto, very upright Jion, very upright kind of style, very short stances. So we did that. We didn't do any kind of pinan or hand katas that came in kind of later. Very simplistic block punch karate. But very early, I did some sai and bo, but I didn't know it was really called Kobudo. So it was basically we did karate kata with sai, and then I did two katas. First one was shuji, basically. But I didn't know. I thought it was just part of karate. As things progressed, karate in Canada became much more open-minded. A lot more teachers came in. There was a cross-training in the late 60s. Some Taekwondo teachers came in, so kicking became a little more prevalent, and sport karate came in. And I just kind of, malleably adjusted to the times, if you will. So, now we do kind of a hybrid system, but it's very traditional in a lot of ways. So we practice Shoryu katas exactly as they're done Shoryu, so if it's one kan or Rohai, it's exactly the way it's in Shoryu, but Goju-ryu, we practice all the Goju katas, the way it's practiced Goju-ryu. We also do a lot of adjunct Chinese kind of Okinawan styles like Nippai and Hakutsuru. But then we also do cross training. A lot of our instructors will teach other systems adjunct to that, like BJJ or Silat or kickboxing. But our core practice is Okinawan karate and Kobudo.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. So so within your dojo, the core is karate, but then you can have other classes depending on your instructor's
right, area of expertise, or
okay, yeah, experiences or wanting to do something different.
Right.
Yeah. So so how? Well, let's go back. How did you open your own first dojo, and where was it?
Okay. I started teaching in high school. I was a high school student, and there was a high school club, karate club, after school. And the teacher who started it was my math teacher. He didn't really enjoy the experience because the kids were unruly, the teenagers wouldn't listen to him. So he made a deal with me I would take it over. So because I was the same age as the students, I could basically punch and kick anybody I want and put him in line. He was a teacher, so he couldn't really do that. So I brought discipline very quickly to it. And we started going to competition. So we went to competition. People said, "What dojo do you represent?" And the name of my high school was Northern Secondary School. So we became Northern Karate Club by necessity.
Yeah.
So by 1970, I had already had students who were competing, things like that. 1972, I rented a commercial dojo. I was still underage. I wasn't 18 yet. So I signed a lease. Then I knew, because I was underage, if things didn't work out, I could just walk away from the lease. So there was a shrewd business move already.
Nice, yeah. Let me write that down.
But things went very well, and things grew. In very short time, I had 50, 60 students, and I had some students living in the dojo. It was very different times, in the early 70s. And I used tournaments as a means of learning. So we'd go places, and I would stay day 2 afterwards and cross-train with instructors and things like that. So I met, people like Chuck Merriman and Jeff Smith and on and on and on, Bill Wallace and Joe Lewis through competitions. And they kind of helped me with tidbits of martial arts training, but also business advice as well. So I took those things back to Canada, and I started kind of making a hybrid system of what worked in the US, basically. So US is kind of maybe 10 years ahead of Canada at that time in most progressive, business marketing and all things. And I basically try to copy some of the models and, of course, do it in our own very unique way.
Yeah. So what, were it just like open style tournaments then?
We did both. At the beginning, I competed. I didn't really know there was any difference. So, at the beginning, we competed in what would be called the NK, National Karate Association tournaments. And then once I ventured out into the open competition, there's a lot more freedom, a lot more cross-training. And, in the traditional karate competitions, I enjoy that. But, everybody was doing basically the same thing. I went to open tournament, and there's a guy in a gold gi doing a kung fu form and doing backflips and, whatever. And it was just like instantly, it blew my mind, so it wasn't really that I was looking for anything different per se, but it was just phenomenal. It was like a senses overload. Where I would go to a traditional karate tournament, everybody had good stances and good basics and scored the points. It was all about speeds, kind of sparring, which was great. But the open competitions and things like demonstrations, you never really knew what you're getting, and it kind of made my mind think about the possibilities of what we can be doing.
Okay. Now, before we go any further, we did talk about this earlier, but this is karate over coffee. So, do you want to show everybody what you've got there? You've got
I have to represent. This is Tim Hortons. This is the smallest cup that they have. I'm joking. 20 ounces of coffee. But Tim Hortons is the Canadian institution, if you will. Tim Hortons is a very famous hockey player, so therefore, coffee. Right. Timbits, it's very close to a religious experience for us Canadians. So
I had heard of Tim Hortons, but I didn't know who he was. I thought it was just Just
I'm not sure if he's the greatest hockey player there ever was, but he certainly invested his money wisely into restaurants. So there you go.
Yeah, good on him. But so let's go back to
Sure.
your first dojo. How did you open your second dojo?
Well, it's again through competition. So we're talking about 1972, 1973, 1974, 1975.
And you're still
I had black belts from other other styles approach me, and they had dojos. So it was not really a commercial venture. It was almost like a team competition.
mm,
They wanted to be part of a winning group or a winning team. So in a very short time, we had Northern High School in Brampton, which is maybe 30, 40 kilometers out of Toronto, one in Barrie, and they're kind of St. Catharines. But these were not commercial dojos. I mean, my concept of commercial dojo at the time was if I could, pay for the rent of the dojo and I had enough money to go to competitions. A lot of my students couldn't pay for entry fees. I had to pay the entry fees and I had to facilitate travel, things like that, and a hotel room, that kind of stuff. So it's really competition oriented, generating income. And a lot of times, end of the month, I couldn't make the rent, which I always had the money for the rent. Was a choice between paying rent on the 28th or going to another competition on 29th. And most times we went to another competition. So I would tell my landlord, I was sick that month, or my leg hurt, or my mom was in the hospital, and I would kind of get the rent waived for a month, But in the late 70s, I realized that you can make a very good living at it. I don't mean a living in terms of like looking for, it's not a greed thing, but it's just kind of making a living out of something that you love. Maybe that's what it was. And I started looking at a lot of the American schools. I looked at the junior schools, which were at that time it'd be 30 schools. And Jeff Smith was the vice president of junior sports. I knew him through competitions. He was very kind to me, and he gave me operating manuals and things like that. Then I became very friendly with another group in Minnesota. They had a chain of schools called Mid-America Karate. And they were also forming a junior. There was Larry Carnahan and the Worley brothers, and they were very, very smart. The schools were sleek and students were exceptional. And I really liked that concept. So I brought it to Canada in 1979. We started doing things like, we started first doing introductory classes, which for $9.95, you would do the class or two and you get a t-shirt, and it's kind of, that was unheard of. And then a year later, we're giving uniforms away, which most martial arts schools were confused because that was their main way of making money. They sold merchandise. So they made money from uniforms, belts, and grading fees. It wasn't really, the tuition was just basically what paid for the upkeep of the dojo. So they couldn't understand how I was giving merchandise away, but they didn't realize that we were all inclusive, but we were charging a lot more than they were, and we were giving a lot more service with that as well. And that's already 79, 80. And then we progressed from there. 1980, I launched the Black Belt Club, which was anybody who would want to enroll for a longer period of time. And then a few years later, we started the Master Club, which was people who wanted to enroll beyond Black Belt level. But all those things, they kind of sound very commercial and, what people refer to my dojo like, but we always thought very traditional karate. It was always about, hardcore training, but we're service oriented, so we'd have more classes, we would have, things for our students to make them, the training easier in terms of arriving and being there, we don't charge for water, things like that, we give away a lot of merchandise, things like that, but the training is the training. It's never really changed from day one. A punch has to be done a specific way, stance has to be done a specific way, so that never really changed. But the nurturing process, how we develop teaching, how we develop staff, in the 70s, early 70s, there was this bizarre concept of, as a teacher, your job is to make your students quit. And then eventually the last guy left will be the true student, And I trained for quite a while with a teacher by Robert Delgage, who wrote an article for a short-lived magazine, I think it was called Black Belt Times from New York. And he had this article where he said it takes 10,000 students to make a brown belt. It takes 1,000 brown belts to make a black belt, and it takes whatever. And I had that frame in my office for like 5 years. I had a wall, and then I looked at it, and pardon my French, but I thought, what a crock of shit that is. You're teaching something where you want people to quit. It's just like saying, like, I'm going to have 10,000 customers in my restaurant, and I want 9,000 of them to hate my restaurant. That's how good I am. So that's not really, So I wanted to flip the numbers. You know, if we have 10,000 students, why can't 10,000 of them attain their black belt?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about overnight. If it takes 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 years, whatever it takes, but what can we do to nurture these people to actually attain that level and, you know, stay with martial arts, stay with karate for the rest of their life?
Yeah. That's excellent. You should. I hope you still have that frame so you can look at it each time and go, no.
I have a JPEG. I look at it from time to time. It's still there, you know, and it's still being circulated with some of the older,
Yeah.
you know, karate teachers.
How do you deal with people who? Well, I mean, I've had it plenty of times that say, you know, karate martial arts should be taught. You know, you shouldn't charge for martial arts. You know, karate should be something that you give away.
Well, that's all those people are usually Westerners. First of all, let's start with that.
Yep.
If you look at from, you know, JKA, and then, you know, Masuyama's Kyokushinkai group, they charge a lot of money for gradings, and, you know, there's a lot of money going back to Japan. The instructor drove very fancy cars. You know, some of the British karate teachers in the late 60s, early 70s had Rolls Royces, you know, things like that. So just because you're wearing white gi with a war on black belt does not make you a saint. You know, one has nothing to do with the other. You're a professional. It's like saying, you know, a doctor, you know, if you're going to a top doctor, it's a top doctor. Mother Teresa, you know, heal sick people in one way, but that is, you know, that is you can't. A doctor is a professional, an accountant is a professional. And a lot of times, the quality of their life, it represents the level of their expertise, level of skill, and the service they provide. But I personally, I believe in living a humble way. You know, I always talk about the Trudeau, the middle path. You know, you shouldn't not be able to afford things in life, but you should not be ostentatious. You know, I still think we do a lot of charitable things. We're very much involved in benevolence of things. You know, so the more successful our dojo is, the more scholarships we can award. You know, things like that. So we share with community. It's a very important thing for us. I would say, in a year, not mind you, not last 2 years, not 2021, but prior to that, and already starting now, we probably give about $1 million to charity and various things a year.
Yeah, I've seen that, especially around Christmas.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
But to me, that is really part of the, you know, the benevolence of karate. If karate is might for right, then what are you doing? You know, it's not about how big your house is. It's really what you can do for the community and the world at large.
Yeah, there's not many, as I was saying earlier, there's not many traditional karate full-time dojo who just keep evolving their training as well and keep learning. And there are a lot of traditional karate dojo, but they're kind of stuck in the 60s, 70s style of karate. You're moving up and down the floors doing countless kihon and countless kata. But how did you expand from 2 dojo to is it 15, 14 dojo now in one city?
We have 14 dojos in Greater Toronto area. So Toronto is the largest city in Canada, about 4 million people. But we also have affiliate dojo outside the city. But the core commercial schools, if you will, commercial meaning open 7 days a week. And having full service, we have 14 locations. And prior to COVID, we had just under 11,000 active students. That's based on a computer check-in. If somebody checked in once in a week, we count as active. It's an interesting thing. A lot of people ask me how I find the school directors, what is the process of owning the school, that kind of stuff. All our school directors are students. So everybody was a white belt on the floor. And they went through a process of becoming a black belt, being an assistant instructor, having some special skills, you know, whether it's exceptional karate skill or exceptional people skills, or a lot of them have degrees in teaching, things like that. And they're just, you know, caring professional individuals who really, they're teaching martial arts not as a profession. It is their profession, but they're teaching out of passion. So if they had a choice between doing that and teaching, high school math, they would certainly want to teach karate. So it's not a choice of, necessity, if you will. They're well compensated. They make as much money as any kind of professional in any field. But it's not about the money. It's not really a financial thing. It's about it's about education and excellence.
So well, first of all, how do you identify them as a training, or do they come to you after, or?
No, it's people that I know from day one,
Yep.
white belts and become black belts and meet on summits, whatever. But for, let's say, the 14 dojos we have in Toronto, we probably have 30 plus dojos, which are my former students. They also have dojos, and some of them are very successfully commercial. And the reason why I didn't want to open a Northern Karate School is because there's something in the character that I saw a flaw, a character flaw. So if you wanted to get into martial arts as a business, that was not the way. If you wanted to make a living as a teacher, martial arts teacher, then I would foster your growth and things like that. But I didn't think of teaching karate as a default thing, and I didn't think anybody should go in it just to make money. So that's That's why I love those. They're very good students. Technically, they went on their own and they started their own schools and they're very successful, but they're not evolving. And so a lot of the people who left me, let's say 1980 or 85 or 90, that's exactly what they're teaching. They're teaching that Northern Karate version of 1980, 85, 90, where we're evolving all the time because we're teachers second and students first. Our number one source of signups is word of mouth referrals. Some of our dojos will have 75 to 80% of new members coming through referrals. Even though I spend thousands of dollars in web marketing, whatever it is, it's a hit and miss. Some weeks it's tremendously effective, other weeks are not so much. But the referral, as long as students leave on a high, you have these ambassadors of goodwill for your dojo leaving there. So it's really important, not just from the karate concept, but also from the marketing concept, to make them fall in love with martial arts.
Especially when that person, you can spend $5,000 in advertising and marketing, but they don't know you. But when their friend says, "Hey, come down to this Northern Karate Dojo," all of a sudden you've got two people who will push each other and stay longer. That's excellent. In that, how many? So out of 11,000 pre-COVID, and how many were those were in the 14? Are they all in the 14 dojo?
Yes, I'm talking about that. We don't really count the outside affiliate dojos. Some of those people will train with us, but they'll teach the other style. They came, but the 14 dojos in Toronto, that's core. That's our core. They all teach the same curriculum. Gradings. We have a black belt graduation tomorrow. We have 189 people grading for black belt, graduating to black belt. So all the instructors will be there. It's a very tight knit family, where when you see a 45-year-old 6 or 7 done, they've been training since they were 7 or 8 with me. So it's really a lot of the communication is nonverbal communication because you're around each other for so long. So your values are the same. Your understanding in some ways, If I teach with somebody, one of our instructors, I just look at them and they nod at me like, I know I was going to fix his knee anyways. They nod at me. It's just it's a very symbiotic relationship. If you hire somebody from outside from another dojo, you don't have that kind of connection.
And then then you've got to try to take everything they've learned outside and change it to for me, it never works. I have hired outside staff, karate instructors before, and it might work for a little bit, but in the long run, it doesn't. Because they've got a conflicting idea on movement, for example, and then that sort of creeps into their teaching, and then all hell breaks loose. But back to gradings, I have seen some of your gradings, and wow, mate, holy. Just the amount of people at a grading, like you go to a basketball, or is it you get to a local school in the basketball stadium usually?
Usually do it at a university. It's a like a double gym with seating for a couple thousand people. So we usually fill it to capacity, and the fire marshal will come in and complain that they're going to shut us down. That's a good sign always that we're doing well, you know.
Yeah, there's too many people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how do the 14 schools, for example, do they do their own gradings in-house or Q grades, and then you do black belt gradings all together?
Okay. What we do is we do a dojo grading. So in a dojo, let's say you have 10 candidates in a dojo, and you'll do a grading and you'll decide 8 of them are worthy. Then we have an all dojo grading where they go to a large gym, and there's 4 stations, and they perform for different teachers of different dojos, and they have a card and everybody kind of scores. So you need specific average to pass for specific rank. And if you pass that, then you're going to graduation. So every dojo person grades, and usually not with their own teacher. So first you grade with your own teacher, then you grade with a teacher from another dojo or senior from another dojo.
Right.
Okay. It works quite well. Works fairly well. It's no system is ever perfect, you know.
Yep.
But you know, my whole thing is maintaining balance between good level of martial arts, but not to be almost abusive in some ways. You know, just, you know, and we always talk about personal best. So in addition to the quality of martial art technique, you have to think about can the student actually perform better? You know, so I mean, we have a lot of older adults training. You know, I have people in their 60s, 70s. I have a student who's 85. He still does 2-3 classes a week, and he's almost blind. You know, and he's got limitations, things like that. But he trains hard. You know, so you know the concept of what is excellent for him. He exceeds excellence just by showing up at 85, you know, putting on his gi on. And we have little kids, you know, so I'm not talking about black belt, but, you know, we have 3.5, 4-year-old children starting. So this whole concept of a yellow belt, you need perfect horse stance or this or that. At 3.5, there's no perfect anything, you know, just, you know, so yeah. My whole thing is that every belt, everything you're doing, stripes, we go, you know, stars for specific merit things. It's just a tool to make a good black belt. So ultimately, those are not ranks. There's no yellow belt, there's no green belt, there's no blue belt. You know, those are all tools to make a very good black belt. And that's the whole thing, you know, just how to make a good black belt. When you get a black belt from our schools, you become a Shodan Ho. And for a year, you don't get a certificate. So you get a plain black belt, nothing written on it. No, you know, if you train regularly, you don't really retest per se, but the instructor is to give you a thumbs up. So number one is, you know, we have a lot of teenagers training, and once they get a black belt, is like, you know, Mom, I got my black belt. I don't have to go to karate anymore. You know, yeah. So this whole concept, you know, it takes one more additional year, and we try to work on new material, things like that, trying to make them stay. And of course, we have a huge dropout rate at that age group and that level because they've been training for 4, 5, 6 years. You know, and karate, as exciting as it is, after 6 years, you know. It's not as exciting as talking to your friends who are doing Instagram things or TikTok videos, whatever. You know, it's really hard to keep somebody for 6, 7 years, and we do that. For adults, it's not a problem. We have adults who've been students with us for 30 years, and they're just regular students. They will renew their membership, line up, and train. With the kids, you know, their attention span, if you will, and it just in karate, we're competing with all these other things on the outside. They're just kind of vying for our students, you know. So how do we fight those concepts, and how do we maintain a student? That's something that I wrestle with every day. Yeah,
I often think that the competition is not other karate schools.
Yeah,
competition is soccer, cricket, tennis, footy, gymnastics, swimming. You know. Well, that's the end of part 1 of a 3-part series with Cesar. Make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for listening to Karate Over Coffee. And if you're enjoying the podcast and getting something out of the episodes, there are a few things you can do to help us. If you don't already subscribe to us on YouTube, please do so. We release these episodes every Friday morning, Australian time. Plus, we release some smaller espresso shots during the week on both our YouTube channel and our Facebook community group. You can also subscribe to us on our Apple or Spotify. Leaving a 5-star review will be very beneficial as well. If you have any suggestions or topics or feedback or anything that you want to talk about, please put it in our comment section on our Karate Over Coffee community Facebook group. If you'd like to support us, please visit our online shop where we have official Karate Over Coffee shirts, hoodies and mugs available. Your continued support is appreciated and a vital way for the podcast to keep moving forward. Thanks, guys.